Welcome to the Evolution of Mom podcast. We are your hosts, Amy and Shreese. We hope you enjoyed our last episode on the empty space between your head and your toes. Today's episode is on embracing your pleasure and finding what fills you up and what feels good.
Yeah, leaning into that joy, but like more so. We're deepening the levels now. We've talked about embracing mindset practices. We've talked about finding your joy as an individual. We're diving a little deeper and talking more on pleasure.
And pleasure is such a beautiful tool to show us what is in alignment,
who we are.
Yes.
What we like.
Yeah. The more that I find, when I am struggling with resistance and things are feeling hard, it's because I've gotten away from what brings me joy and I've gotten away from what brings me pleasure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
It started for me with just adding in little bits of things, right? Things that I just didn't even really recognize stuff that would just bring me pleasure, but like putting on a pair of earrings or putting on some mascara, something that I'm doing just for me. It starts my day with that thing that makes me feel good. It's just for me. I'm pouring into my cup and it's kind of expanded from there. And it's really hard with pleasure because it's different for everybody. And it's not we're not talking about, going out and pleasing is like self-pleasuring or, doing things wild and crazy. If you want to, go ahead. If that's what fills you up,
brings you pleasure,
go ahead. Right. Yeah, it's the little things, right? It starts with the little things for me. It started with finding that cup of coffee. I have daily practices, and part of my daily practices are pleasure, finding something that is just for me that brings me pleasure. And I've talked about it before, a good latte is one of my favorite things. But if I can go and have a latte with a cookie, and when I need that thing that's just for me, that is it's one of my favorite things. I can't stress that enough, right? It could be a cup of coffee, it could be a book, it could be earrings. It doesn't really matter what it is. It looks different, but as long as it's something that that is just for you, that's important.
Mm-hmm. And it's about mindset and intention, right? How often have we talked about setting an intention around joy when you're doing something for yourself, an intention around mindfulness and space for yourself? This is another level of self-awareness and intention to have a pleasure practice each day.
Mm-hmm.
Right? For you, like a good example, adding on that cookie, adding on that cookie with a intention of pleasure. I'm going to eat this guilt-free and it's going to bring me so much pleasure and so much joy. And you're going to allow that space for yourself, allow your body to produce those chemicals, those hormones that are induced when you have that mindset around something, right? It's so valuable, so important. And yes, it could be anything.
Yeah.
And anything you want to treat yourself to, even physically.
Yeah. And we talked about with Pasha, it can take a little bit to get to know.
Yes.
Right. It can take, I know I had to try a few things when I was looking to find what brings me joy and what brings me pleasure. And I'd be like, okay, so I have these couple things, maybe let's go try it. And so we would try it and I'd be like, well, no, that's not really it. Right. Whereas now I'm kind of leaning into the sacred sexuality practice. And that's lighting me up in a whole other way. It's opened my world. There's shooting colors and rainbows all over the place. But that self-pleasuring practice has been a huge addition to my self-care routine.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And just, yes, starting your day with that intention of what's going to be my pleasure today, what's going to be my joy, what's going to be my moment for myself. And, easy ones for me that I can think of, if I haven't done something to bring pleasure to myself in a day, at the end of the day, I'm thinking, okay, what can I still do to make sure that I have gone to bed with this practice, this sense of pleasure in my day? One of my favorite things, honestly, that brings me so much pleasure, sleeping naked with clean sheets.
Yep.
Honestly, yep. That is very pleasurable and very cozy and just a weird individual thing to myself that brings me joy, but a deeper sense of pleasure.
Yeah. it's so unique and individual. And I mean, that is one of the things that I know that the more that I lean into my pleasure practices is like sleeping naked, just stuff like feeling things on my skin. I think
Yeah.
it's a way to fill up your emotional body. Bless
Excuse
you.
me.
It's a way to fill up your emotional body, and I think our emotional body is what craves love so
Mhm.
often. And for me, it's that ability to give myself self love. So whether I take myself on a date, whether I get all dressed up for the day, like one of the things it bothers me so much is like when you get dressed up and people are like, oh, where are you going, or who are you getting dressed up for? It's like, nobody, me, I'm getting dressed up for myself. Like those kind of things, like, I mean, we feel like we have to have a reason to do those things. We have to have a reason to put on makeup. We have to have a reason to wear our nice clothes. But
What if that was your reason?
right.
What if pleasure was your reason? And what if someone asked you that and that was your answer?
Yeah.
Oh, you're all dolled up. Where are you going? Oh, it's just for me. It's a part of my pleasure practice today. Hello, conversation starter. Honestly.
I've had some of the most wild and crazy conversations since embracing this practice.
Oh my
Like
gosh, I know.
it's been amazing.
I know.
But like that's like you have, like, I'll look in my closet and I'll have this most beautiful, like lacy summer pretty dress, and I'd be like, oh man, I have nowhere to wear it to. Put the dress on, wear it, like
Mhm.
wear it right now just because you can. Like there's no reason why you can't wear it. And if it brings you pleasure in that moment, like, I mean, how pleasurable is it to like get all dolled up,
I
right? Put
know.
your makeup on, style your hair, and like put on heels and go out on the date,
Yep.
right? We've talked about that before. It's like you take on the world differently when you go out. So you don't have to have an excuse or a reason to do it except for yourself.
That's right.
It makes you
And
feel good.
yeah, whatever's going to make you feel good. It could be the opposite. Maybe you're someone who has to dress up every day for work, and maybe a pleasure practice for you is coming home and putting on the softest, most comfortable thing that you own and treating yourself in luxury that way,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
right? Running yourself a bath to soak your sore feet if you are in a position where you have to wear high heels all day or choose to, right? Or all of these things, right? There's so many different avenues you can take with it.
Yeah. I mean, even just like for me, like
Yes.
that, like putting lotion on my skin now, like everything I do has an intention behind it, or I try to make sure that it has an intention behind it. And it's all act of self love. Like my top two core values are integrity and love. And so I ask myself continually, what would love do? And so when I was like, when I put lotion on my skin, or if I'm bathing or I'm in the shower, right? Like how often do we just like quick scrub, get it done, right?
Mindlessly.
Or we can take the time and really like feel around our skin, and there's a different hormone release, there's a different energy release, right? And you carry yourself differently when you
Yeah.
take that intentional space and be like, I'm really going to show myself love and pleasure right now, right? Like I love taking in the smell of my body wash while I'm doing it, or when I put lotion on the skin, like just like
Mm.
really taking it in and really appreciating being there in the moment, present in the moment, the smell, the feel, the taste, the sounds, like be there in that moment. I think that's what pleasure really is all about.
I think so too.
You can't have pleasure if you're not in the moment.
I think so too. It's a proactive, intentional presence in that moment. I think you're right. How many of us, again, get into that daily um, habit, that daily consistent, what's the word I'm thinking of? I don't know. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're
Where you're
like,
just going by the
it's like
day.
it's autonomic, really. It's like
Thank
it's
you. That's a really good one where you're just habitually going through, and maybe you're showering, maybe you shower every day. Is your shower, is it rushed?
yeah,
Is it just quick, unthought
like
motions,
mindless. Yeah.
habitual, mindless motions? Whereas, really, in reality, how beautiful is it that we can start a day with a hot shower?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I love standing there and I literally close my eyes and feel the hot water on my back right there. That's a moment of pleasure right there. Just taking a present moment and being intentional with what your thoughts are.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you ever spent any time without any hot water, you know how much like
Yes.
we are lucky. And I think that is part of it too. We get accustomed to what it is that we have, so we forget to take pleasure in it.
Yeah.
Right? We have hot water, we have air conditioned houses, we have um, our car that sits at like 21 degrees, all these kind of things that keep us kind of comfortable, but we forget to take pleasure in it. Right? Like you think about when you go and you buy a new car or your first car. Your first car is like my favorite. You buy your first car, and I don't care if it was $500. You loved that car. Like you were like, oh my God, this is amazing. And
This
you
is
were
my
so
baby.
excited, right? Like mine was Betty Lou, the all Canadian Pontiac Acadian. And she, like, I decked her out. She had all these things on her. She had like a fluffy leopard print steering wheel
Oh,
cover. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. I was pretty proud of
So
that
the
car though.
opposite of
But
you.
like, you know, it's, but I had that car, which like literally cost me $500. I bought it off my aunt. And then I have my like brand new Hyundai Santa Fe now. And I'm like, this is kind of like, yeah, sure, it was new and shiny at the beginning, but I forget, I'm almost like, okay, maybe I need a new car now. Right. Because
Mhm.
it's a few years old. I'm kind of bored of this car. Right. Instead of remembering what it was like to really appreciate that car and bring that appreciation in to
Mhm.
it. Right.
I think from the episodes we have done from start to finish, we're taking you on this journey of deepening your mindset, deepening your self-love. And I think we, started with happiness, it gets down into joy, we're deepening into pleasure, and all of this really brings us into gratitude and self-love and love.
Mm-hmm.
And coming at life from a space of gratitude and love changes everything.
Yeah.
So
I
when you
mean,
can find pleasure in your shower, you're actually holding space of such gratitude for it and such love for yourself. Really.
yeah. And I mean, love is the highest frequency that you can be at. Right. So, yeah, it is an evolving practice, and every step kind of like opens the door to something new. But it's, I mean, it's amazing when you start feeling that sense of love, that sense of magnetism that happens when you embrace pleasure. Right. I mean, how often do we get stuck in that struggle and in that grind and in that like push and force. And I know for me, that leads to a lot of exhaustion and a lot of burnout
Oh,
most
absolutely.
often. Right. And it's like, I'm like, I have to do this. I have to do this. I have to do this. And then like, you go until you can't go anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And whether that is something like whether you have a broken foot or like the universe walks in and says, nope, you need to lay back down. Right. Like, but the more I find that we lean into pleasure and experience that, like I could do this all day.
Yes.
Right. Like you're filled up as you're doing it. And that's a different kind of feeling, right? Because it's not as much of a struggle and a grind, and it doesn't feel like work.
Mm-hmm. And when you can learn to find joy and pleasure and love and gratitude in those daily habitual practices when you're going through the motions, it changes. You're not going through the motions anymore. You're embracing the beautiful life you have, the beautiful life you've created, which is leaving room for more.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Pleasure practice.
pleasure practice. So takeaway,
Honestly.
find something, a moment every day. It can be different every single day, but find a moment for yourself. Doesn't matter what time of the day, but that is strictly for you, strictly that brings you pleasure.
Yeah. And if you haven't listened to the episode with Pasha, go back and listen to that.
Yeah.
She gives great examples. Her
Yeah.
toilet paper one is my favorite. Go back and listen to it just for that story.
Yep.
Honestly, talk about the simple pleasure practices you can do for yourself.
Yes, absolutely. Well, as always, we hope you enjoyed this episode. If you found value in it, please share it with a friend, and we would love to hear your feedback. So leave us a review or send us a message on Instagram. We always want to hear you. And as always, don't forget to put yourself first, because you can't pour from an empty cup.
That's right. Self-care is selfless. Ask us questions, connect with us. We love you. Thank you so much for being here. And as always, thank you so much to the Next Level University podcast crew. Bye.
Bye.